gun hurt her.
You. Your last customer.
A distressed call reached the police. A woman reported that she shot her brother, and soon after, news stations in Chicago began covering a serious incident. A lot of murders started happening all over the state, and crimes against the police spiked.
More than 3,500 shootings with a total.
The government ain't coming for you. Things are worse than ever before.
While this is happening, a squad car sped through the city with one officer bleeding heavily in the back seat, while his partner fought traffic to get him to the hospital. The officer reported what happened to his partner and kept driving to get him to the hospital on time.
We can do it! Stay awake!
On the way, the driver tried to keep him awake with words of encouragement, but the injured man was already slipping away. When they arrived, medical staff rushed out, placed him on a stretcher, and pushed him inside as the officer explained what had happened. Surgeons were called immediately, and Paul, known as the hospital's best, handed his current patient to another doctor and hurried toward the operating room while being briefed along the way.
Get the OR ready.
Yes, doctor.
Once inside, he listed what he needed and prepared to start, but it was already too late. The officer had died before they could begin.
It had nothing to do with you. His heart stopped. He's lost too much blood.
Paul delivered the devastating news to his partner, who blamed himself, though Paul explained that the blood loss had been too severe.
Dr. Kesy, OR2. Dr. Kesy, OR2.
What?
The following morning, Paul checked his watch while eating breakfast with his wife, Lucy. He noticed that it was slowing down and mentioned it to his wife. Lucy suggested buying a new one, but Paul was attached to the old piece. Their talk shifted to their daughter Jordan, who had been waiting for her college results. Paul is a little worried, and Lucy tries to reassure him.
I know. I just miss envelopes.
Paul told her that he is confident Jordan is going to get accepted. He just didn't like that it was going to be announced online. Moments later, Jordan screamed with excitement upstairs. Her parents realized that the scream was good and relaxed.
It sounds like a good scream.
Soon, Jordan ran down, acting like nothing happened. She casually started interacting with her parents, and Lucy got up to bring her breakfast. Paul then asked about the scream, acting as if he didn't understand what it was about. Finally, Jordan couldn't hold it anymore. She announced she has been accepted into a New York university.
Okay, good.
Oh my god, I have to text Sophie to see if she got in.
She promised her father she would visit often, even just to do her laundry, before running back to her room to call a friend.
You have to tell that to your face.
Baby.
Lucy noticed Paul wasn't as thrilled as expected. She then hugged him to make him feel better about his daughter leaving.
Guess I always had it in my head that she was go to Northwestern, someplace close.
Later, the family went to Jordan's soccer game, cheering from the sidelines while Paul looked saddened about her leaving for school. Lucy reminded him that she too had once moved far away to attend college in Texas and assured him Jordan would visit for holidays and they could travel to see her as well. Nearby, another father aggressively scolded his daughter about her playing, and Paul eventually told him to calm down.
Oh, that's a good idea. Why don't you do that?
The man snapped back rudely, grew more hostile, and even shoved Paul, but Paul chose not to retaliate. Lucy stepped in before things escalated further, and the man walked away, mocking him.
Oh my God. Why didn't you whoop this guy's butt? Like in the old days.
That evening, the family met Paul's brother Frank at a pizza place and shared what had happened. Frank reminded everyone that Paul had once been a good fighter, though Paul confessed that in his youth, whenever he sparred with their father, he usually ended up crying after losing.
And I actually found a boxing gym in Tribeca that all the supermodels go to, so I'm gonna start going there.
Frank began demonstrating some self-defense moves to Jordan, but she laughed and explained that she already trained regularly and knew those techniques.
Two doctors.
Are you gonna call me doctor?
Yes, I am.
You are?
Turning to Lucy, Frank then asked about her PhD progress, and Lucy shared that she was nearly finished, prompting everyone to lift their glasses in celebration.
Two Kersies that aren't doctors.
How about cheers to us?
Non-doctors.
After lunch, Paul and Frank stepped aside for a private talk. Frank admitted he needed money, and Paul agreed to help him with $2,000, which Frank gratefully accepted.
What, $2 grand? What?
Hey, man, I've been convicted of a crime.
A man named Miguel happened to overhear their conversation and picked up on the fact that the family would not be at home later that evening. Before returning the car, Miguel quickly snapped a photo of the family's address from the dashboard.
I got it.
Wednesday, 8 o'clock, La Fonda.
And I wouldn't forget a restaurant like that.
That night, the family prepared to go out for Paul's birthday. Lucy had given him a new watch as a gift, which he received with delight. But just as they were preparing to leave, Susan called Paul with news that his patient, Terry, had fallen ill.
Oh, and who is this calling?
Because of that, they decided to postpone the birthday dinner. Jordan promised she would explain the situation to Uncle Frank and hugged her father before telling him they would still celebrate together soon. Lucy comforted him.
Don't worry at all. Promise.
Try and stay awake.
Okay.
Paul then headed back to the hospital while Lucy and Jordan stopped at the store for groceries. When they arrive home, they talk about what they are going to make. Jordan suggests ordering a cake, but Lucy insists that they bake it.
Hi, Soph.
Lucy then asked Jordan to get her iPad, which is upstairs. Jordan went upstairs to also make a phone call, while Lucy settled in the kitchen to bake. Neither realized that a man stood quietly at the door watching. Lucy carried on with her baking until she noticed something unsettling. Pages of her cookbook shifted as though from a breeze, and then she realized a window had been left open.
Jordan, can you please come down here? I need it.
When she closed it, she saw muddy footprints on the floor and suddenly understood that someone had broken into the house. Alarmed, she called out for Jordan, but before Jordan could answer, a man hiding in the bathroom lunged out and seized her. Lucy grabbed her phone to dial the police, but within moments, Jordan was dragged downstairs where 3 armed men appeared.
So you won't be calling anyone till we're long gone.
Okay.
No, if you could do that, no.
Terrified, Lucy pleaded with them to leave her daughter alone, but the intruders threatened her life and demanded she follow their orders. Lucy begged them again not to hurt Jordan, and one of the men coldly replied that it was entirely up to her choices.
It's okay, Mom. Just do it. Just go.
Tie her up.
Tension grew among the criminals. One angrily told his partner to stop playing with a knife and made him put it away.
Hey, no fucking games.
As Lucy was marched upstairs, she tried to appease the gunman by saying her husband had 2 watches and extra cash in the safe, which earned her a sarcastic thanks. Meanwhile, another intruder went to the basement to fetch a rope. Lucy, trembling, struggled to get the safe open, trying to explain that the gun pointed at her was making her nervous. Downstairs, the man with the knife took advantage of the moment to harass Jordan, while she desperately begged him to stop.
Goddamn, you're strong.
At the same time, Lucy finally managed to unlock the safe and began filling the intruder's bag with valuables. The one who had gone for the rope returned and began tying Jordan up, but the knife-wielding man argued for more time before she was restrained, prolonging the girl's terror. The refusal of the second man led to a heated clash between the intruders, and in the chaos, Jordan saw her chance. She snatched the knife and slashed one of them across the face, drawing blood. Furious, the other man struck her to the ground just as Lucy returned with the third robber. Seeing her daughter in danger, she reacted without hesitation, throwing boiling water into one attacker's face and urging Jordan to run. But before either could make it to safety, the criminals lost their temper and opened fire. At the hospital, Paul was deep in surgery when word came that 2 new female patients were being rushed into the emergency department. Alarm rising, he handed his case to another surgeon and tried to join the ER team, only to be stopped by colleagues.
Paul, something has happened. We can't go in there.
When he realized the victims were his own wife and daughter, he broke free and ran toward the emergency ward, only to be told Lucy had already been moved into surgery. Desperate, he rushed there, but was met with the crushing news that she hadn't survived.
They took your daughter up to surgery, Doc. Your wife's in too.
The weight of the truth shattered him as he entered the room to see Lucy's lifeless body, leaving him devastated. Soon after, Detectives Raines and Jackson arrived to question him, documenting that valuables had been taken from the family safe.
$2,000 in cash.
Frank arrived as well, furious at what he called police negligence, demanding to know how many robberies had recently taken place. The detectives admitted there had been 6 in the area, which only fueled Frank's anger.
I'm just wondering if it's important enough now to go on their radar.
You're not helping.
He berated them for failing to warn residents, but Paul intervened, urging his brother to stand down. The detectives assured him they would pursue those responsible and left Rain's card in Paul's hand, promising support. In the midst of the grief, a nurse delivered a glimmer of relief. Jordan had survived her operation. Paul hurried to her bedside, where he was told the surgery had gone well, though she remained in a coma. He refused to leave her, keeping constant watch.
Uncle Frank's gonna take over reading duties for now.
Time passed, and Lucy's funeral was held, where her father Ben delivered a moving speech that left Paul quietly grieving. On the drive back, Ben thanked Paul for bringing his daughter to her childhood home and reminded him he would always have a place there. He asked if there had been progress on the investigation, and Paul admitted that 3 repairmen had been sighted near the neighborhood.
Saw 3 repairmen in a white van.
Suddenly, Ben pulled over after spotting something unusual. Consumed by rage, he sped toward his property where 2 poachers were trespassing. The men bolted the moment they saw him, but Ben gave chase, firing shots as they escaped into the distance. Paul was shaken by the violent pursuit, yet Ben stood firm in his conviction that waiting on the police was pointless because they only arrived after lives were ruined. He told Paul sometimes a man had to act for himself, and to drive his point home, he shot the wounded deer the poachers had left behind, putting it down swiftly. Later, Paul drove through the city while speaking with Detective Rains, his frustration boiling over as he learned there were still no suspects. Distraught, he lashed out at a stranger who approached his car, only for Rains to reassure him over the phone, promising to keep him informed. As Paul pulled away, the man he had snapped at shouted curses behind him.
Sorry, some asshole trying to clean my windshield. Hey!
Paul went to visit Jordan in the hospital, where she still lay unconscious. Her friend Sophie was seated by her bed, softly reading aloud from an economics book. When Paul entered, he greeted her and asked about the choice of reading material.
The nurses let me come in early.
No, it's okay. I'm glad you're here.
He jokingly remarked that a subject like that wouldn't exactly wake his daughter up. They both shared a small laugh, though Sophie added that she hoped it would at least keep Jordan from falling behind. She asked if she should leave, but Paul encouraged her to stay.
Do you think it helps?
I know it does.
In the weeks that followed, Paul began therapy because his nights had become unbearable. He couldn't bring himself to sleep in his own bed and instead collapsed into restless naps on the couch. The guilt weighed on him so heavily that he felt useless both at work and at home, convinced he had failed to protect the people he loved. His therapist reminded him that recovery was a slow process and that healing would take time.
Starting to wonder about the result. That's all.
Despite this, frustration drove Paul to the precinct, where he confronted Detective Rains face to face. He demanded an update about the DNA evidence, only to be told it hadn't matched anyone in the database.
What about the DNA and the blood and skin from the guy that got burnt?
On the wall behind Rains, Paul saw an overcrowded board of open cases, most of them unsolved, and it was clear the department was drowning under the weight of crime. Rains admitted that most cases involved gang members hurting one another, which meant they didn't get much attention, but promised that Paul's case was different. He insisted they would at least catch one of the men, and that one would lead them to the others. When Paul asked if he could put up a reward, Rains warned against it, saying it would overwhelm them with false information.
What if I offered some kind of reward?
We'll just get flooded with false leads.
Paul then wondered if hiring a private investigator might help, but Rains dismissed the idea, pointing out that PIs only handle domestic disputes or missing persons. In a murder case, they would have no real authority and might even be charged with tampering if they interfered.
PI is good for cheating spouses, missing persons, but...
One evening, leaving the train station, Paul noticed 2 men harassing a young woman. He stepped in, but instead of backing off, the men turned their aggression on him. They beat him savagely, though the distraction gave the girl the chance to flee. Paul staggered home battered and exhausted, only to catch a commercial on television for a local gun store. The ad lingered in his mind, planting a dangerous thought. The very next day, he visited the shop, where a clerk eagerly showed him various firearms and explained the strict process of purchasing one. Between the paperwork, classes, and constant surveillance, Paul grew impatient and walked away, saying he'd think about it.
Here, we have the F1 firearm semi-automatic,
Not long after, while at the hospital, Paul was operating on a gunshot victim when a pistol slipped out of the man's clothing and hit the floor. Without hesitation, Paul concealed it under the table and later tucked it into his own clothes to take home.
Take it easy, you're okay.
When he first tried to use it, the shot ricocheted wildly, rattling him and making him realize just how unprepared he was. Determined to change that, he began studying online tutorials and practicing until his aim grew steady and precise. Then came the news he dreaded. Jordan had suffered a seizure. The doctors managed to stabilize her, but her prognosis was worsening, and seeing her restrained for her own safety filled him with rage. The thought of those men still walking free became unbearable.
My daughter is in handcuffs.
That night, Paul pulled on a hood, armed himself with the stolen gun, and disappeared into one of Chicago's most dangerous neighborhoods. Paul ventured deep into the rough part of the city, and before long, came across two men attempting to carjack a woman. He stepped forward to stop them, but instead of fleeing, the thieves opened fire as they tried to speed away.
Hey!
Paul dove out of the line of fire, rolled across the pavement, and fired back. His bullet struck the driver, sending the car crashing violently into a post. Shards of glass shattered everywhere, slicing into Paul's hand, while a neighbor peered from her window, capturing the entire ordeal on her phone. The passenger scrambled out of the wreck and began firing wildly. Paul ducked behind another car, waited patiently for an opening, then delivered a clean shot to the man's head. Walking closer, he ended it with a final round to be certain the attacker wouldn't rise again. He urged the terrified woman nearby to run, then calmly turned his attention to the wreck, where the driver took his final breath. On his way back, Paul tossed the bloodied hoodie into a trash can, boarded the train home, cleaned his injured hand, and collapsed on the couch. Yet sleep brought no peace, only violent flashbacks of what had just unfolded. Meanwhile, detectives Rains and Jackson gathered statements from witnesses. The woman who nearly lost her car praised the mysterious gunman for saving her, while others described the hooded figure as cold and remorseless. The bystander recording confirmed both versions. A masked man who seemed to know exactly what he was doing, except for the way his hand jerked awkwardly, betraying inexperience. Jackson suggested he was new to handling firearms, while Rains noted the injury looked like it came from recoil, not a bullet wound.
Now that is the slide kicking back and cutting his hand.
Though the detectives asked the witness not to share the video, it was already online within hours, spreading like wildfire. The footage revealed only a hooded figure with an injured hand, never the face. Paul sat at home watching the viral clip, stunned at the realization of what he had done. The media soon pounced on the story, dubbing the Vigilante the Grim Reaper, and debates ignited as to whether he was a savior or a menace. Even the reporters seemed to lean toward calling him a hero.
I say the guy's, some people are mad at me. I say the guy's a hero.
At work, Paul hid his wound under thick bandages and kept his hands stuffed in his pocket whenever officers were nearby.
This poor kid got shot on the way to school.
Later that day, he treated a young boy with a bullet wound, speaking gently until the child trusted him enough to confess that the shooter was a drug dealer. Locals called the Ice Cream Man.
The ice cream man, money.
The ice cream man.
From the boy's chart, Paul quietly pieced together the dealer's address. That evening, he slipped another hospital hoodie over his clothes and walked into the very neighborhood where the boy had been shot. Spotting the dealer out on the street, Paul didn't hesitate. He raised the gun and fired, leaving the man dead before fleeing into the shadows. Residents swarmed in to scavenge the dead man's cart. Detectives were called once more, and witnesses again described a hooded figure who struck without warning. Jackson pointed out who the victim was, and Rains stood silently, watching children on the sidewalk pretend to reenact the shooting. One boy imitated the shots with his left hand. Rains immediately recalled the earlier footage of the so-called Grim Reaper, realizing with growing certainty that both killings had been carried out by the same person. Paul continued tending to the wound on his hand while the city buzzed with headlines about the mysterious vigilante striking again. News anchors debated endlessly as police leaders berated detectives Rains and Jackson for failing to stop him, though Paul sat quietly at home, secretly watching the coverage with a strange blend of pride and grim satisfaction.
You got a white guy in a hoodie killing black people. You don't have a problem with that?
Public opinion split. Some praised the unknown figure as a symbol of justice, while others condemned him, even dragging race into the discussion. At the precinct, the detectives faced mounting pressure from their boss, who worried the story would inspire imitators.
Everybody's nervous about a copycat. Where are we?
Still, their leads were weak, and they had little progress to show. Meanwhile, Paul's therapist noticed he seemed lighter than before and asked if something new had changed in his life. Without realizing the truth, she encouraged him to continue whatever he was doing.
Charged.
Clear.
Days later, Paul found himself in surgery with yet another gunshot victim, only to recognize the man as Miguel. On the dying man's wrist gleamed Paul's missing birthday watch. Though he went through the motions, Paul's attempt to save him was half-hearted, and Miguel slipped away on the table.
Time of death, 9:35 p.m.
Seeing an opportunity, Paul entered the ambulance, stole Miguel's phone, and even pressed the dead man's finger to unlock it. He retrieved his stolen watch and scrolled through Miguel's files, growing sick when he found a photo taken from inside his own car, showing his address. The memory of his family's conversations with Frank about their plans came rushing back. Another photo revealed a liquor store, and Paul decided to investigate. As he left the hospital, he ran into Frank by the door. Frank said he had come to check on Paul and Jordan and suggested lunch, but Paul brushed him off, asking if he had come for more money.
Frank. Yeah, it's all right. Look, this is the $2,000 I owed you.
Offended, Frank clarified that he was there to return the $2,000 and to celebrate his new job. He walked away as Paul called after him.
I'll see you.
Yeah.
Later, Paul disguised himself again with a hoodie from the hospital laundry and went to the liquor store, pretending to be a friend of Miguel. The owner listened, but quickly noticed Paul's hospital tag still attached and secretly texted someone named Fish. Reaching for a revolver, the owner's move was reflected in a mirror, and Paul reacted instantly, flinging a dart into his hand and forcing him to drop the weapon.
Drop it.
With his own gun raised, Paul demanded the stolen valuables. Reluctantly, the man led him to a safe in the back, swearing he only handled the drop-offs and knew nothing about the larger operation. Inside the safe were the belongings taken from Paul's house. Just then, Fish burst through the door and opened fire. Paul dove for cover, and in the chaos, Fish's bullet struck the owner instead. A furious firefight broke out. Fish sprayed rounds wildly while Paul scrambled to reload. When Fish slipped on the growing pool of blood, Paul snatched up a guitar and smashed it over him, then shoved a heavy piece of furniture in his direction. Fish narrowly dodged and staggered toward the bar. Watching the security monitors, Paul timed his shot and put a bullet into Fish's leg, dropping him. Stepping on the wound to make him talk, Paul demanded to know who had killed Lucy. Under the pressure, Fish confessed it was a mechanic named Joe and that his address was in his phone. But before Paul could grab it, Fish kicked him hard, sending him crashing into a shelf. Gun in hand, Fish rose to finish him off, only for a bowling ball to tumble from above and smash into his head, leaving him dazed. Paul didn't hesitate. He seized the man's own weapon and pulled the trigger, ending the fight. Before leaving the liquor store, Paul seized the hard drives from the security system, but unknowingly dropped his ring on the floor. Later, at home, he studied online videos, drilling into the drives to destroy the evidence.
And when I do that, the information that's inside of this metal box.
The following morning, the media frenzy grew even louder, with the Grim Reaper's name dominating headlines and talk shows everywhere.
Clearly, if he didn't just kill somebody, I don't know what he did.
I still stand by.
At the hospital, Paul quietly slipped syringes and medication into his pockets before detectives Rains and Jackson arrived. They showed him a photograph of Fish and placed the recovered ring in his hand, explaining they believed it had been stolen during the earlier robbery.
With subpoena his cell phone records, his text, even the phone's GPS.
They had no idea it was actually his, and Paul, relieved, accepted it back with calm gratitude. The moment they left, he started smashing Fish's phone to erase all connections. Fueled by the lead, Paul tracked down Joe at his auto shop, sneaking in while the mechanic worked beneath a car. With a single blow from a wrench, he knocked him unconscious. When Joe awoke, he found himself tied beneath the suspended vehicle. Paul's interrogation was merciless, injecting drugs into his system, slicing into his skin, and pouring brake fluid directly into the wound until the agony broke him.
What you're feeling is a caustic agent.
Finally, Joe blurted out the name of the man behind Lucy's death, Knox. Paul responded with chilling composure, thanked him, pretended to release him, then triggered the lift to drop the car, crushing him instantly. Meanwhile, detectives grew increasingly wary. They visited Frank, hinting that the vigilante seemed to be hunting the same criminals connected to Lucy's murder. Suspicious, they asked to see his hand, hoping to match it with the wound reported by witnesses.
Of course. So, do you mind if we see your hands?
Back at the hospital, Paul sat with Jordan, but was shaken by a news broadcast showing murders now being committed by imitators in the Grim Reaper's name.
The father of 3 was killed while trying to commit vigilante justice.
His phone rang. Knox was on the line, demanding that Paul meet him at a nightclub within 30 minutes. As Paul prepared for the confrontation, Frank stopped by his house. When no one answered, he went inside and was stunned to discover the basement stocked with weapons, ammunition, and clear evidence of Paul's secret crusade. The realization hit hard. His brother was the Grim Reaper. At the crowded nightclub, Paul texted Knox to confirm his presence, only to be told to meet in the bathroom. Following the sound of a ringing phone, he kicked open a stall, finding only a phone left as bait. At that moment, Knox appeared from behind, using a terrified patron as a shield and firing indiscriminately into the crowd, gunning down innocent bystanders without hesitation. Chaos exploded across the club. Paul was shot and ducked into a stall, returning fire whenever possible, until one of his bullets struck Knox. Thinking quickly, Paul aimed at the power box and blasted it, plunging the entire nightclub into darkness. Using the confusion to his advantage, he slipped away, merging into the stampede of panicked clubgoers.
Jackson.
Soon afterward, detectives received word of the massacre, and at the hospital, one of the injured victims brought in turned out to be Knox himself. Inside a quiet hospital room, Paul stitched and sealed his new wound with nothing more than glue and a stapler, gritting his teeth through the pain. Meanwhile, Knox cooperated with investigators, giving them enough information to guide the detectives straight to Paul's office. By the time they arrived, however, his desk sat empty. Paul had already slipped away. Later that night, he returned home only to find Frank waiting for him, furious and horrified at what his brother had become. Paul defended himself, insisting he had been left with no choice because no one else would take action.
My wife and daughter just disappeared.
But before the argument could escalate, the doorbell rang. The detectives stood outside, and Frank covered for him, lying that Paul wasn't home.
We're expecting your brother.
Yeah, he's out. Dinner party.
Suspicious, but without a warrant, they left, and Frank returned to Paul, urging that they had to find a way to make things right.
Paul, this has to end. It's got to end, man.
That same night, Paul's phone rang with the call he had been praying for. Jordan had finally regained consciousness. He raced to the hospital, overwhelmed with relief as he embraced her, though the moment turned heartbreaking when he told her that Lucy was gone. Jordan collapsed into tears in his arms, both of them bound in grief.
Dad, they won't tell me where Mom is.
Once she grew stable, Paul swore to Frank that his vigilante days were finished. A week later, Jordan was released from the hospital and brought home. Detectives tried questioning her, but her memory of the night of the attack was blank.
Maybe over time you remember something. Either way, we'll keep looking for the guys.
As father and daughter rode the elevator together, Knox stepped in, exchanging casual words before dropping a subtle hint that he would be seeing them again.
Mom going home too.
Realizing Knox was circling closer, Paul returned to the gun shop and purchased weapons legally this time, preparing for what he knew was coming.
Welcome to Jolly Rogers. How can I help you?
I want to buy a gun.
That night, Frank came over for dinner. They talk about Jordan's education. Frank asked about her therapy and told her he is happy that she is finally out. After dinner, Frank left.
Dad, the kitchen's clean. I'm going to bed.
Later, while Jordan prepared for bed, Paul spotted movement outside the house. He quickly instructed her to hide beneath the stairs and dial 911.
911, what is your emergency?
There's men, they're breaking into my house around my front lawn.
Moments later, intruders broke in, one firing at what he thought was Paul sleeping upstairs, only to discover it was nothing more than a decoy of pillows. Another followed the sound of running water only to stumble into a trap where Paul ambushed him with a precise shot. When the first intruder checked on his fallen partner, Paul was waiting and gunned him down as well, sending the body crashing to the floor below. Hearing a disturbance from the basement, Paul descended, but Knox was waiting. A shot tore into Paul's shoulder, knocking him onto the couch. As Knox closed in for the kill, Jordan's terrified scream rang out from the stairs, pulling his attention just long enough for Paul to slam a hidden switch in the table. A concealed weapon popped free, and Paul seized it, firing the fatal shot that ended Knox's life. When the police arrived, Paul explained that his wounds had come from defending his home and emphasized that every firearm he owned was registered and legal. Though detectives remained wary, the case was effectively over, and with Knox dead, the string of crimes appeared resolved. Sometime later, Paul drove Jordan to New York to start her college life, where her friend was waiting for her.
You can go now.
All right. Go be smart.
As Paul walked back toward his car, he caught sight of a petty thief snatching a bag from a bellhop's cart. Without thinking, Paul raised his hand like a gun and called out sharply, the instinct of the Grim Reaper still alive within him.